doing a deal with a vendor, negotiating a vendor contract, there's some specific provisions in there that may be somewhat unique or somewhat atypical and not in all the other contracts you do. So it's important to have a couple of things in mind when you do these contracts and make sure that they're covered. The first is really the scope of services, and that really means what's the vendor providing for you? What are they going to do? Whether it's they're going to custom build a piece of technology for you, they're going to provide a service for you, whatever they're going to deliver at the end of the day, you need to make sure that that's very clearly defined so that there's no misunderstandings or lack of clarity around it. The next thing you want to have is the performance standards or service level agreement. And what this essentially is what are the metrics, what's the means by which you're going to measure whether or not the vendor has provided what they are contracted to do. These are going to be very important. If you're talking about a vendor who's providing you a service, it could be uptime, it could be availability of the service, it could be the value that they've delivered, but you really need to understand very clearly in the contract what those items are. After that, you want to have a set of resolution procedures and penalties. So if something hasn't gone right, if something isn't going right, how do you solve that problem? What's the very clearly defined steps that are required on each person's part? How long does someone have to respond? How long do they have to fix the problem? If they haven't fixed the problem in a certain amount of time, what are the penalties that are associated with that? And what you want to do is have those clearly defined and also have penalties around them so that the motivation is on both partners' part to get the thing done. You also want to make sure that you have controls and security and confidentiality. So what type of information is the vendor going to get from you? What type of information about your users are they going to get? What types of things are they going to have access to? You want to make sure that it's really clearly defined, not only that they are responsible for maintaining control and safety of all this, but also that any third party that they contract out with has to abide by those same regulations. Because oftentimes you'll find that vendors use outsourced vendors themselves. You want to make sure you're covered here. The final thing that is important, especially when you're talking about technology, is ownership and licensing. You want to make sure if you're working with a vendor who's writing some code for you or building a product for you, who owns that at the end of the day? Is it something that they're going to own and continue to hold on to and be able to resell? Is it something that you have ownership for? That has to be really clearly defined in the contract, otherwise it could lead to a lot of litigation down the line. What you'll see is that vendor relationships are different in many ways from the other partnerships that your company is going to be involved in. So it's important when you start to get involved in negotiations and vetting vendors, you make sure to incorporate all of these elements into a contract so that you have the protections that you need to make your business successful.